everyone, and welcome to Beginnings, the show that asks, where do creative people come from? My name is Andy. I'm the host of the show and a writer and performer based in Los Angeles, California. Day 102, I think, of the writer's strike. Carol Lombardini, the head of the AMPTP, has requested a second meeting in 1 week with WGA. Last week, she requested a meeting last Friday, and we went there. Not me, but the negotiating committee went there, and she was basically like, so you guys sick of striking yet? And they were like, are you going to offer any of the things we're asking for? And she said no. And they said, well, then what are we doing here? So it was basically the AMPTP trying to poke and prod, see if we would cave. And we have not. The solidarity is thick. But then she's requested another meeting this Friday, and I don't know what's changed in a week, if anything. I know that there were a lot of earnings calls that went on and I wonder if maybe the CEOs of the studios were yelled at by investors. I don't know. We're not asking for much, and in fact, the things we're asking for are things that would save this industry. Like, they want to pivot to AI, but AI can't actually do the things that the snake oil salesmen who are selling the AI say it can do. There's a great episode of The Dig a couple weeks ago that went into it. I highly recommend listening to it. Of course, listening to it after you listen to the rest of this episode. I don't know why you would suddenly stop in the middle just because I recommended another episode of a different podcast. But today's episode, I was super psyched to talk to Christina Schneider. And if you don't know who she is, I'm going to read you her bio right now. Originally from Westchester, New York, musician Christina Schneider, a.k.a. Locate S1, began her career making music in various projects, such as C.E. Schneider Topical, Christina Schneider's Genius Giant, and Geppetto Solutions. I really like Genius Giant. And in 2018, she began recording as Locate S1. She's released 3 albums, Healing Contest, Personalia, and her latest, Wicked Jaw, which was just released at the end of July by Captured Tracks. Highly recommended. It's great. I've been a fan of Christina's music for a couple years now, so like I said before, I was psyched to talk to her. And she's great. She's very open. We talk about a lot of stuff. I think I should probably give you a content warning, though, as we do discuss sexual abuse. So I just want you to know that. We also talk about growing up in Westchester, work, schools, a lot more. So I hope you enjoyed this episode. I hope you find it meaningful. And if you do, my dear friends, why don't you check out other episodes of Beginnings? What I like to do here in the intro is a little recommended if you like Christina's music, if you like my talk with Christina, maybe you like my talk with other musicians, like, say, her partner, Kevin Barnes from Of Montreal. I talked to him about a year ago. Or what about, just, I don't know, women in indie rock, I guess. I don't like really genderizing these things, but what the fuck, just for this. I've talked to, just in the past couple years, Mary Timony, Satomi Matsuzaki of Deerhoof, Victoria Vark, Julie Doiron, lots of people, lots of writers and journalists and comedians and actors. So if you like the show, period, why not subscribe? Why not leave a review? Also, you can find me on social media. I mean, Twitter's absolute crap, but whatever. I'm writing jokes there. At Andy Beckerman. Pictures of Naomi and the animals over at Andy Beckerman on Instagram, and just nonsense at Blue Sky. So I guess that's how that breaks down. Coming up, folks, got some great interviews. Will Oldham, Teenage Fan Club, and then, we're almost here, the 600th episode. Got a special guest for that one, so stay tuned for that. But for now, let's talk to Christina. After 13 years, I wouldn't feel like meeting a stranger, either in person or not only 13 years of doing the show, but 44 years of being a human being in the world and having a social life. You would think that I wouldn't feel the anxiety upon meeting a new human being like I am.
But I'm glad I'm glad you feel the same way. Yeah, I was like listening to a bunch of episodes of your podcast, getting ready for this on the drive, and made me feel a little less like strangers. But
so yeah, it's interesting. So you've heard the show, and I listened to your music for a couple years now. So there's some bit of familiarity.
Yeah,
there.
And now we just have a meeting of the minds.
But not through. But it's mediated. It's mediated through art or through mediated through your art for me. And in my case, it's mediated through whatever the presentation of me is on the show is for you.
Totally.
Did I say that correctly?
Yeah, definitely. I get what you mean.
Where are you going? So you're in your car. Are you on a trip or something, or is it just like errands?
No, I'm actually in the middle of moving up from Georgia to Vermont. And so we're driving up today and tomorrow with a big U-Haul, and I'm in the car.
Oh, wow. What prompted the move?
Yeah.
Besides Vermont's beautiful.
Yeah, well, I used to live in Vermont when I was in high school and college, and moved to Georgia to be with my partner, Kevin, and his daughter just graduated high school, and she's going to college in New York. So we're like, okay, we can go up north and be closer to her.
I was in my head for a moment because I'm just like, his daughter just graduated high school. Because in my head, I'm thinking of like an Of Montreal song from like 20 years ago, and I'm talking about, and I'm like, oh God, of course, 20 years has passed.
I know, it's insane. It's insane.
Or 18, I suppose. Like, sorry, I had a moment of like temporal dislocation.
That keeps happening. I keep thinking that like 2000 was like 2 years ago, and it's not. It's not at all.
So wait, how long have you been her stepmother then? Or step?
Kevin and I started dating when Alabi was 12, so it's been about 6 years.
Is that something have you ever thought, like, my wife and I, just to preface this so you don't feel like I'm just like throwing you into this, we don't want kids. We're not kid people. I mean, I love my nephew. We love all of our friends who have kids. You know, we're happy to go to their birthday parties and give them presents and all that kind of stuff. We don't want children. Was that something that you had wanted? Was it just thrust upon you and you're like, okay, I can adapt to this?
Yeah, it was really not something I imagined myself ever doing, was having kids. And in a way, like, I feel lucky that I got to bypass those sleepless nights of infancy with a child. And you know, like, I don't really have a parental relationship with her. I kind of, you know, I don't feel comfortable asserting that kind of role onto her. So we're more like, you know, friends.
Yeah. You also, you did skip those years, but then you were thrust right into teenage years, which I assume are fraught.
Definitely. It's insane. I don't want to get into her personal business, but sure, yeah, it's pretty crazy.
You don't want to air out your partner's child's teenage anxieties on a podcast?
Yeah. That would definitely make me the evil stepmom that I fear being.
So wait, besides being with your partner, did you ever want to move to Athens? Was it like it? Because to me, growing up, especially with like Elephant Six music and things like that, I'm just like, or REM before, right? I'm like, oh, Athens, there is something special about it to me. Did it ever feel like that to you? Or was it just like, well, no, this is where my partner lives, so I'm going to go there?
Yeah, well, weirdly, before I had even met Kevin, I had passed through Athens a couple times on tour and just really fell in love with the people there. And, you know, I grew up listening to Elephant Six music, and you know, the B-52s were one of the first bands that, like, really got me. And so I always wanted to try living in the South, too. I was, like, a born Northerner. So it was a good experience, but I'm glad to go back up north.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. See, as a born Northerner, it never held any kind of allure to me, besides, like, there are certain parts where bands I like are from or whatever. But I'm like, I can watch videos of things happening in that town. I don't have to actually visit it. It doesn't.
Totally. Well, that's what I learned after 6 years of living there.
Is it southern? Like, is it Is every town, even like a hipper kind of town like Athens, does it still have kind of Southern morals and I'm using Southern maybe a little too broadly. I'm going to say like Confederate values and like DeSantis type beliefs.
There's definitely that. I mean, like the government in Georgia is pretty twisted, conservative, but there's like a real split in Athens because the university's there.
Right.
And so there's a lot of like young progressive people making awesome music and stuff, as always. But yeah, it's like these two different worlds that exist next to each other. And then on top of that, Athens is like the birthplace of Greek culture. So there's like a lot of that, like frat sorority. You know, you see people drunk at 3 p.m, like trying to get into your car because they think it's an Uber.
Wait, sorry. Okay, sorry. At first, when you said that, it took me a second, and I was like, "Oh, Athens." Sure, you meant. I thought you first meant Athens, like literally, like Athens, like Greece. And I'm like, "Oh, sure, right. That's the sure, right. Modern Greek culture, perhaps there." And then, wait, literally, the Greek system started in Athens, Georgia.
Yeah, and I think that's why it's called Athens. I think because that's where these like colleges started up and became the university, and it was like where they invented the frats. I could be totally wrong. I am not an Athens historian. I love that I'm just stating this like it's fact, and I heard it like 6 years ago, and yeah, but that's what I was told anyway.
Oh. Ew. Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. I'm just trying to get a picture of like this kind of like complicated area that you have lived in for the past decade, because if you are from the North. Now, where were you before? Sorry, this is a parenthetical into what I was saying.
Yeah.
Where were you before Vermont? Like, where were you growing up?
So I grew up in Westchester, New York, which is like an hour north of Manhattan. My dad worked in Manhattan. And so there was a lot of back and forth between the city. And it wasn't really the suburbs, though. It was like kind of a more rural area in the woods.
Yes. What's his name? Schmidt from the New Girl grew up in Westchester. There's a lot of like,
no way.
Yeah.
That's
Max
so
Greenfield.
funny.
Max Greenfield. That's his name.
He's so funny. I love him on that show.
AOC from the suburbs of Westchester, I believe.
Oh, wow. Nice. Hell yeah.
So my wife is from Harlem. I lived in New York for a long time before we moved out to Los Angeles. So I know.
Okay, cool.
Was your dad in finance? Like what did he do in the city?
He was a creative director for an ad agency, and he made a lot of like Pepsi commercials that you've probably seen. Much to my embarrassment.
Why embarrassment? Like
well, I guess I was kind of a rebellious kid and like very I was kind of like a punk, so I was very anti-capitalist, and it was like my dad was doing the most capitalist thing in the world. Yeah.
It could have been worse. Could have been an arms dealer. Could have worked for Lockheed Martin. In terms
I know,
of like,
it's just that was crazy. I just listened to the Kate Fagan episode where she was talking about her dad doing that. I was like, whoa, that's a pretty broad spectrum of places to work.
yeah, for sure. There are ads, yes, high up there, but also not the most damaging, not the worst.
Yeah.
How did you get into punk, anti-capitalist kind of thought? Like, because I think we're near the same age or something like that. So I think we're talking maybe the 90s or so.
Yeah, like late 90s. I was in high school, and I think I was just a weirdo and was really isolated socially. I didn't really get along with people. I was kind of a weird kid. So that was like, I feel like punk was kind of like the armor that I put on to like keep other people away.
Do you mind going further into depth into what you meant by weird? Because I was a weird person. I am still. Nothing changed. I'm still weird. But like, what was it for you? What did that mean for you when you were younger?
Well, when I was younger, I experienced a lot of sexual abuse, and sorry to like jump right in, but and this is like probably another part of why I'm weird is because of that. I think I tend to like be really private or overshare things. And so as a kid, that was really isolating. And, you know, people rightfully don't really know how to respond to conversations like that, especially when they're, you know, 10 years old.
Oh, yeah, of course. I don't know how 10-year-olds articulate anything. You know, it's very difficult for that. I can't imagine something that is that traumatic is even 1/10 as easy to like articulate. Like, I mean, it must be so difficult for something that traumatic and an adult.
Yeah, totally. Adults don't even really know how to talk about that. So yeah, and as a kid, you don't even really have the words to, or the framework to understand that that's maybe why you feel weird and different from other people. So at least for me, it was just like, I'm just going to stay in my room and alphabetize my CDs and my DVDs, and that'll be my life.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, is that how it kind of manifested in terms of like a kind of agoraphobia?
Yeah, definitely. And just I was kind of like, yeah, to protect myself, just kind of like mean to other people in a way, you know, like not going out of my way to hurt people, but just like, you know, stay away from me. Like, I just want to be alone.
Yeah.
That kind of thing.
By the way, if any of these questions are too much, please tell me to stop. But it's just that
Okay, yeah.
It seems like this obviously was I want to say inflection point in your life.
Yeah, definitely.
And that's only why I'm like curious about it, because, you know, I don't want to, you know, tell whatever are comfortable sharing. Before, how many years, like how long did this go on for?
Yeah, I'm totally comfortable answering questions, so don't hold back. But yeah, it was, you know, pretty much as far back as I can remember, until middle school, 8th grade is kind of when I realized what was going on. And, you know, once I realized what was going on, it ended. But I didn't really get treatment, therapy-wise for that for really, honestly, until like this past year, the past 2 years. So in a way, it's like, it's just been a theme for a very long time.
Yeah.
For me.
What happened where you were finally like, I think I need to talk about this, or I need to do EMDR, or, you know, however you wanted to deal with it?
I think I just saw that I was reacting in ways that didn't really make sense to what the situation was. And there had to be an explanation for, like, where's my anger coming from? Why is it so hard to take criticism? Why do I start little fights with people about, you know, like, why do I start fights with my partner about nothing? And just wanting to be like a better partner, a better family member. I just wanted to take care of my shit, really. Yeah.
Because, I mean, I'm asking this not to like poke your trauma, but I'm curious about your creative life. And if this is something that goes back to, like, as far as you can remember, I'm kind of curious, how does your creativity develop in such a traumatic context?
Well, I think it was almost like music. I started out writing just a lot of poetry, and I was just, you know, I sucked in school because through all of my classes, I would just sit there writing poetry. And at the same time was really obsessive about music in a way where, like I said, I needed to have like every album. And so like I would just be on the hunt for albums and alphabetizing them. And then that just, both of my parents are musicians too. They're both guitar players. And so they had taught me guitar really young, and it was just like a totally natural thing to do, was to write music, because you can do that alone.
Did they ever do that professionally?
No, not professionally. My mom did make a EP that I love, but I don't think she ever tried to release it.
Were they frustrated musicians at all? Like, did they have aspirations?
Definitely, yeah. I mean, my dad still plays music all the time. My mom writes songs every now and then that she just kind of like keeps to herself. But I think that she really had this vision of, you know, being a musician or some kind of professional performer, and having like a more domestic life as a stay-at-home mom, I think, was not satisfying to her.
Did you catch on to that when you were a kid? I'm sometimes very obsessed on the show with catching the scent of regret off of parents and how that forms people.
Yeah, absolutely. She did not hide it, so there was nothing to catch on to.
Oh, no.
She was very open about it.
When you say, like, okay, yeah, but like did that, there's stuff that I'm sure my parents said that, like, I was living in my own little world in my head, so I think a lot of stuff, like, bounced off me, and then, sorry, for the listener, I am hitting my head as if like a light beam is hitting my head and then it's bouncing off into another direction. Like when you were younger, did it influence you at all? Were you like, oh man, mom seems sad?
Yeah, well, it was very, like, I think that's part of why I was so rebellious. And like I said earlier, I never imagined myself really having a traditional family, because I was kind of like, I don't have to be a mom just because I'm a woman, and I don't have to be part of this like patriarchal system. And so, yeah, I think like getting really into music and punk music was a way of asserting that independence and autonomy.
Yeah. What kind of punk are we talking about? Would this be like are we talking like Green Day? Are we talking Black Flag? Like what era?
Well, when I was a super young kid, my first like contemporary band that I loved was No Doubt.
Mm-hmm.
And that kind of led me into like this like horrifying world of ska. And then
oh, I'm familiar. Oh, have I skanked? I've skanked. I have, for sure. I've dressed up in a suit.
I'm ashamed to say I've skanked, but I eventually matured to more like post-punk and like X. I really loved X a lot. Crass was huge for me. More like political, super left-leaning punk bands.
So are you like taking the train into New York to go to see shows in like Williamsburg, or like where would they be? Lower East Side at that point? I'm not sure.
Yeah, both. Yeah. Yeah, it was a great place to live close to, because I could see a lot of music. Saw the Dead Milkmen once when I was a kid. Yeah, that's exciting.
Great. Yeah, that's really awesome. Yeah. I can't. I've interviewed the Dead Milkmen, but I've never gone to see them. I think so.
That's awesome.
But
I love them.
Yeah, no, me too. That was definitely like a something that there was. Is it Bitch and Camaro? There's something about Bitch and Camaro where maybe I'm misreading it, but it seems like when they're doing that beginning part, they lose track of which character each person is, and then it just kind of like goes off the rails, and that has stuck with me since I remember. So I used to work at Pathmark when I was in high school, or I went from supermarket to supermarket, and I worked at Pathmark for maybe like a year and a half or so, and I was the dairy person, and so I stocked the dairy section. I put the milk in from behind, and I just remember listening to Dead Milkmen like as I'm stocking the milk and doing all that stuff. And that's a very present memory in my head.
Wow, that's amazing. I love the way that music can just like get injected into those little moments forever.
Yeah, it is like there are certain songs. There's like super chunk songs I can think of, like Throwing Things, and I remember driving around my girlfriend's neighborhood while listening to that song, like as I'm going to her house or leaving her house, something like that. There's like very different. Do you have memories like that? Are there specific songs that are, I guess, Proustian like that, where you get immediately like pulled out of the present? And if so, what are those songs?
Absolutely. For me, a big one is ABBA. ABBA was truly my first love. And I have a relationship with ABBA that's not unlike Toni Collette's relationship with ABBA and Muriel's Wedding, if you've seen that movie, where like they were this escape for me. And every time I listen to ABBA, I'm taken back to my bedroom as like an 8-year-old child, just making my Barbies dance like Agnetha and Frida. Like, I just go right back to that place.
That's great. Yeah, it's so interesting like how there's just like a couple neurons in our heads, and it's just like a thing that's frozen there that just like we can visit every once in a while when we're triggered into it. Yeah.
Totally.
So okay, so you kind of become a punk. Like, are you doing the whole thing? Are you like wearing the punk paraphernalia? Are you like punked out? Are you?
Yeah, I had a shaved head. I had my vest with my my little spikes on them, and yeah, I was a little brat.
Like during up to 8th grade, is your entire life defined by the kind of traumatic experiences you're going through? Are there things outside of that? I'm not trying to minimize it, but I'm just wondering, like, what's the fuller picture? Like, are there things outside there, or is that really just like everything kind of revolves around this awful experience that's being forced on you?
Well, yeah, no, I think there's a lot more to the story, and I think part of what really defines my upbringing is like this tension between a really beautiful life of like privilege, parents who were, you know, loved me and supported me and, you know, wanted me to do the things I wanted to do. And then contrasting with that was this like darkness and this loneliness that I couldn't explain. But, you know, I feel equally influenced by both. And I just kind of have had to learn how to like hold those in tension with each other forever.
Oh, that's really interesting, because I've thought a lot about adulthood as being not so much as holding things in tension, but like trying to, like, I've tried to become like an integrated person, as opposed to one where I fall into different modes, if that makes any sense, in different contexts, as opposed to the older I get, I guess really more like the more therapy I go through. It has been about like being the same person regardless of the context I'm in, and not falling into these modes, or being able to fluidly move from mode to mode.
Totally. Yeah. And that's like really what's been really helpful about the therapy I've been doing. It's called internal family systems therapy.
Yes, I've heard of that.
Yeah. And it's, you know, it's about integrating all these different parts of yourself that feel really at odds, and exactly like you said, being able to, you know, move through those different parts more fluidly and integrate them. Yeah.
Do you mind if I ask about how the therapy actually works?
Oh yeah, totally. I love it because it's not like regular talk therapy where you just kind of go in and complain about your day and the therapist is like, yeah, that sucks. You know, it's really structured in the sense that I'll come in and my therapist will ask me a question like, what's present for you today? And then, you know, I'll say like, I'm having this feeling, you know, I'm feeling maybe like, just to give an example, like I'm having this problem with my friend. And then instead of going into the details of that and trying to figure out like who's right and who's wrong and here's the advice of what you should do, it's almost like a meditative experience where she kind of guides me through like, where's that feeling coming from? What part of you is feeling that feeling? And how long has it been feeling that feeling? And when was the first time that part felt that feeling? And you kind of like go back into the past and unburden these different versions of yourself that were holding on to this pain that at the time you didn't have a way of understanding. So you've just like carried it forever thinking that's just the way I feel. But yeah, what you feel isn't always super accurate.
Yeah.
It's not an accurate depiction of what's going on.
For sure. Not just not accurate, but also I can say this because she talks about it all the time, but my wife, has depression, and sometimes it'll just like come on her, and I'll like, the mood will shift, and I'll be like, hey, did something happen? And she's like, no, nothing. She's like, no, nothing. She gets frustrated because I like say that, and then I've started to learn, like, don't ask that question. That's not the question to ask. Because like nothing happened. There was not like I'm like, did you read something like that triggered? She's like, no, it didn't. It just, there's something that like just moved. I mean, this is not how she explains it, but like something in your brain just changed, just moved, and then this happened. This state came over you.
Totally, yeah, and I totally get that. It's hard to understand why when you're experiencing that, and it's easy to give it a reason that's maybe not correct.
Yeah. No, I'll use myself then but like there are certain times where I'm like, why am I gritting my teeth? Like I'm holding some tension in my body, and it's not like, I don't know why. Suddenly I'll just reflect on my physical state. I'm like, oh, you're really gritting those teeth there. What's going on? And it's not like a thing. I didn't read a thing. Again, I didn't do anything, but I've been doing in therapy. I did something called EMDR, where we went back in to certain memories, and I would tap as I talk. Like I would talk about them and then do this tapping stuff. And in doing this, it kind of whatever those and mine are just like minor stuff. It's not like anything super traumatic, but it's enough that it has bothered me for my entire life. And so you kind of go in and like rob those memories of their power.
Yeah. That's cool.
It was really great.
That's like, I think that my stepmom did that for fear of flying. It's like a self-hypnosis kind of thing, right?
Well, this was guided. So my therapist talks me through this whole process. And you keep it's basically like you go to whatever this memory is that has been hurting you. You talk through it, you tap, you kind of free associate off of it, and then you're tapping, and then you go back to the memory and you tap. You also it's supposed to be eye movements, but my eyes, I have like bad vision, so I don't like moving them. Like you're supposed to like move them rapidly back and forth, and it actually hurts my eyes. So the alternate is this like kind of like you put your fingers on each out like almost like you're hugging yourself, and then you do this rhythmic tapping.
Wow, that sounds cool.
And then you do that for as long as, I mean, it kind of worked somewhat quickly, like within a couple months for me. And do you do the tapping like after the treatment, or is it only during these like sessions? Sorry, I'm like going deep into your therapy now because I love talking therapy. No, totally. I'm totally open to talk about it. No, No, but what I was practicing outside of it was mindfulness.
Okay, cool.
So in order to kind of like center myself and pay attention to what's going on, and I still do it every once in a while, but I do these mindfulness exercises where I'm just very like trying to be present.
Yeah, it's hard. It's hard to be present.
Yeah, it really. Yeah. Between like whatever things happened in the past and complete anxiety about the future, it is extremely difficult. Like, I wonder this: do you feel this? And it's not like I'm on stage very much that anymore these days. But I did do a live. My wife and I do another podcast together, and we did our first live show together on Friday. And I found myself perfectly present in that moment.
Interesting. So you feel like performing allows you to be present in a way that you can't really in day-to-day life?
Yeah.
Yeah. I can definitely relate to that.
I'm wondering if that's the same for you.
Definitely, yeah. I think it allows me to sort of, well, I don't know. It's hard because performing, I feel like I have to put on this persona of like a really confident person. But it is weird that in those moments I'm able to embody that because in my day-to-day life, I'm, pretty introverted, not very talkative person. So holding a stage is hard, but yeah, there's something about it that does allow me to be present and just kind of flow more freely.
So, okay. New York, punk. What prompted the move to Vermont? And because you said in high school, right? You moved to Vermont? Was that your parents, or did you like go stay with relatives, or like what happened?
Well, so what happened is when I was a junior in high school in New York, my parents separated, and it was a really messy, traumatic divorce. There was an attempted suicide. It was really, really traumatic, and
Jeez.
I essentially ran away from home with my horrible boyfriend at the time.
Oh no.
And he lived in Maine, and I had kind of met him through these friends who I had met in summer camp up north, and they had friends who went to the school in Vermont, and it was a work school, a private school, where you essentially had to work on a farm. And I just fell in love with the idea of that. And my parents were trying to get me to like come home and finish school. And I was like, well, you've got money, so why don't you send me to this school and I don't have to be near you? And that's what happened. So I ended up going to that boarding school in Vermont and just completely, that was like the first time I felt like I belonged somewhere. I made friends that I really loved, and you know, I love nature. I love the woods. I love animals, and yeah, it's funny. Like you said, a song can bring you back to a place, but like the smell of cow shit, because I shoveled cow shit, like it makes me feel so good.
What was the daily routine on this work? I was going to say work farm, on this work school.
Yeah, it's called a work school, and it's cool. It's kind of like regular high school, except you have a job, and the job changes every semester, and you can kind of choose your job based on what you want. You can be, you know, like a dishwasher, waiter, you work on the farm, shovel shit, milk cows, whatever you want to do. And then they keep you really busy. And then at night you do like your evening activity, which is where we would do arts and crafts type things like weaving or knitting or music, photography, stuff like that. So it was just, and it was really small. They were like, I want to say like 300 students total. So you have these really intimate relationships with your teachers that are, you know, really aware of what you're going through, and I loved it.
What's the goal of the school? To get you prepared for like farming, or what is the
Well, no, like the classes are the same as any classes you would take at any normal high school, but I think the goal is specifically just to give people a community who don't really feel like they've had that experience, and like learning the importance of responsibility and accountability to each other and a closeness to nature, I think are like the big main points.
What was it, besides that idea of community that you said, what was it filling in your life that you maybe didn't know you had needed?
I think friendship. I always had like really problematic friendships, really like one-on-one codependent friendships. And I think learning how to be more part of a community, less individualistic culture, and just being like responsible to the people around me weirdly was freeing. It made me feel like I belonged somewhere, and that like people might care what's going on with me too.
Do you think that was like maybe the beginning? This might be such a basic question, but like, was that the beginning of like some kind of healing? I know that's a dumb question, but
I don't think it's dumb. I mean, yeah, I do. And it also was right around when I started like truly writing songs in a serious way. And I think that was part of healing too.
Did you have an ambition to be a musician?
Yeah, I always wanted to be a musician. Forever. Yeah. There's a video of me when I'm 5 years old that my dad filmed where I just sing this like 8-minute long song. And I'm like doing these dances. I'm just like riffing. And in the song, one of the lines is like, "I'm a star, so what do you think of that?" So I really always wanted to be a musician.
Was there someone you were emulating? Like like someone you had seen on MTV, I don't know, whatever, where you're like, oh, I want to be like that person? Was it just like, I mean, it's not like pop star is such a esoteric kind of desire, but I'm kind of curious about where it formed.
Well, yeah, I think, ABBA, I loved their videos and just like, I just loved their whole vibe. And then when I became obsessed with No Doubt, right. I was like, it was primarily deeply in a deep obsession with Gwen Stefani, where I wanted to be her. Like, I had posters of her all over my bedroom, and I would like try to do my hair like her and dress like her. And then I remember, like, as I started getting older and learning that, like, she didn't write all the songs. And then I was like, well, I'm going to like write all my own songs. And I think that, like, I aspired to be her. And then when I like matured out of loving her, I aspired to like crush her.
That is something that I find, I don't even know what the adjective I want to use is, but that when I learned that there are certain musicians or directors who I thought were these auteurs, and then I learned that no, actually, like, those shots were designed by the cinematographer, or no, there are 10 songwriters on that, and they may have a great voice or a great stage presence or something like that. I don't want to take that away from anyone, but
totally.
But that I became more obsessed with people who, like, not everything comes from them. Obviously, like, people have a community, like artists who have a community and they have friends they bounce things off of and all that kind of stuff. Like, I know what the process is like being in it myself, but that it's generated from within first. Like, that became something that I looked for more than anything else.
Sorry, what do you look for more than anything else?
That it's coming from somewhere inside the person first, and then it ricochets out from there.
Totally, yeah. That's something that I can really relate to. You know, it's like something that's coming from the heart. It's easy for me to love.
I guess that's what I mean, I still do obsess over it a little bit, but like, I guess that is what I think of authenticity as being, even if it does have, like, look, whatever I come up with has to go through 10 layers if it ever gets onto TV, which so far it has not. But, you know, it goes through, if I'm working with my wife, we have to come to some kind of agreement, and then the producers have notes, and then the executives have notes, and then it's this whole process. But like that original idea, as long as there's that original idea that forms somewhere inside me, then I'm like, okay, that's an okay expression.
Yeah, totally. I can relate to that. As my day job, I'm a graphic designer, and there's not allowed to be any shred of anything from the heart. Not to rag on my job, but you know, it's like very much managing other people's input and just kind of going with that. So it's nice to have a place where you are allowed to just do your own thing.
Do you find that it's easier? Like, so say you're writing a song, right? You write the song, and then I assume you bounce it off people. Maybe you have a producer that helps. You have bandmates. You have all these other kinds of people. Like, for you, what is that process like? Or do you just like hold on to whatever that original expression was and then push back against everyone else?
I'm embarrassed to admit it's more the latter. I am so bad at taking criticism, and like that's definitely something I am working on and need to get better at. But it's just so uncomfortable for me because I'm like, but it's my art and how could I be wrong? So, you know, like, I love getting affirmation. So, like, I will bounce songs off of my band and everything. And, but I only ask very specific people for feedback.
Are those people where you know you're going to get the answer you want, or is it that you are hoping they will provide you some kind of alternative that you will find acceptable?
Well, like, I feel like it has to be somebody who understands, like, the kind of feedback that I want. And that kind of feedback is, I love feedback that's like, there's something not working here. There's something not working in this part. And then I can take that and I can, you know, try to fix it, see if I agree or disagree. I hate being told what to do. Mm-hmm. It's like kryptonite. And so if someone's like, you should do this part here, then I'm like, never talking to you again. I'm exaggerating, but it's so triggering. Yeah.
Yeah. 100%. I get it.
And a lot of people, you know, they don't know how to give feedback, so you have to be careful with who you ask.
Yeah. There's people who are like maybe bad at articulating. They don't get what you're doing, or the worst one is they want to impose their version onto yours. I think that's probably the worst kind.
Totally. Yeah.
So
exactly.
When you were making art when you were younger, were you the same way? Because like I remember writing a paper. I had to have been grade school or like junior high or something like that. And my mom is an English teacher with a master's degree.
Wow.
And I was writing an English paper, and she was criticizing it, and I was like reacting very badly.
Oh, that's the worst. Oh my God. Yes. So that was my relationship with my dad, who would always be like, hey, Chris, my family calls me Chris. And like, Chris, let's jam. And my dad would like, you know, play some, you know, like 12-bar blues kind of thing. And then I would try to like follow along and mess up. He'd be like, okay, but if you just like put your finger here, do you see how like that chord? And I'd be like, get away from me, Dad. I hate you. And then, yeah, I think that is kind of part of why I use weird chords sometimes, is because I really wanted to like invent my own language musically. I didn't want to be told what to do. Right. It's kind of embarrassing, but yeah.
No, I'll do my own C chord. I don't need to do it like this. I can... Exactly,
yeah.
I can use both hands. I don't know. However you want to. Tune every string to C.
Totally.
Were you doing other creative things when you were younger? Or was it like once you kind of like zeroed in on music, that's all you really wanted to do?
No, I've always been into like all kinds of art forms. I was really into photography and filmmaking. I was always making films at home. And yeah, I tried painting, but I kind of suck at that. But I enjoy doing all creative things. I think I get that from my mom. She's kind of like a Renaissance woman and just always had different projects going on. And it was very inspiring.
Once you went to the work school, what was your trajectory? Like, did you have, I guess what I'm trying to figure out is like, before you went there, did you envision a future for yourself? Or was it through going to the work school that you started to kind of picture something for yourself in the future?
That's a hard question to answer, just because I've always had a really hard time imagining my future. You know, like even now, for some reason it's hard, and probably, you know, something I need to unpack more in therapy. But I, at least when I went to that school, felt more in the present, and like the future was less terrifying because I could figure out how to be okay, whatever happened. But yeah, in high school is when I started writing songs, and there were a lot of people in that town in Vermont that were just like unbelievable songwriters, and they're, you know, still there. And it's like weird that there's so many great songwriters in this one area.
Is it Brattleboro?
And for me, it was just, yeah, in Brattleboro. And it just inspired me to start writing my own songs.
Yeah. Wait, what years is this?
This is like, God, I always get so bad with the years. So I think I graduated. I went to the Putney School in Vermont in 2006, I think. Yeah, so around early 2000s.
Okay.
When I started living there. Yeah.
So this is like prime, like the quote unquote new weird America phase.
Exactly. Yeah. Yeah. Like I was obsessed. I was obsessed with Chris Wiseman and Kurt Wiseman and Chris Cohen and Happy Jawbone Family Band and just Blanche. Those were all such inspiring. I can't believe I lived in a town with all of those people, even now talking about it. Yeah, it was great.
So, I mean, that's really interesting. One of the things I'm kind of obsessed with on the show is thinking about how communities, you need a community in some way to be an artist, because everyone, like, to really get into it, you got to bounce ideas off of people, and you got to bounce ideas off of people who are maybe not on the same page, but in the same chapter, I guess.
Yeah,
and
totally.
So it's really interesting that you not only do you find community within the work school, but then there's a kind of like wider musical community that maybe gives you, I don't know what, gives you something.
Yeah, totally. And I think a lot of, the reason there's the microcosm and the macrocosm of communities there that made me feel so at home, I think is because there's this value that's placed on doing the work and the process, and less value placed on results or, making it, which I don't know. And maybe it's just because of the people that I've interacted with in Athens, but it just feels like a really unique type of mentality to have that I haven't really experienced as much in other places. Especially for musicians, there's so much pressure to succeed, and what does success even mean now? You can't, it's almost impossible to make money off of music, unless you're totally famous. So it to me feels a little pointless to try. I don't want my label to hear that, but I want to make music because I love it, and I want to put it out because I believe in it, and I feel like that should be the end game, if there's any end game. Does that make sense?
It does. I think it's really difficult to, and I still have trouble with this in, talking about being a integrated person, but there's the part of me that just wants to make the art, and then especially since it became kind of my career, there's the other part of me that's well, you gotta sell it, so it has to be something commercial in some way, and I find that thing infecting my brain a lot, and I have yet to figure out a way to insulate myself from it, because maybe if I dull this edge down, it'll be a little more populist, a little more commercial. But that doesn't mean it'll sell. You never know what is going to, and I have to keep telling myself that. I keep writing or thinking about ideas in relation to a mythical, middle class person who I've decided is the person that an executive thinks is going to watch TV or something like that.
Totally.
This person doesn't exist. I don't know if that's what the executive is thinking. I should probably. A lot of this is just luck. A lot of this is just whatever.
I definitely feel that a lot. Yeah, I have the same brain disease much of the time, and the silly thing about it is that it completely suffocates creativity, because it's not coming from the heart anymore, and then it fails, and you're well, why did I do it?
I think that's it exactly. Is that the fact that there isn't even like a hint of like it coming from an authentic place, or maybe it is, but it's smothered out by that kind of commodified desire or desire for it to be commodified that smothers that authentic feeling out, and then it fails.
Yeah.
And then you're exactly right. It fails anyway. So then what? I don't see any example of like a person who did not want to be corrupted by the commercial aspects of stuff being corrupted. Like everyone who I know who has been corrupted by it has wanted to in some way. Like have gone along with it. And they maybe resisted it a little bit, but not. But I am kind of curious for you. We're right at the end of the show. How are you able to insulate yourself from that smothering commercialization?
I mean, it's something I have to think about all the time, because it always creeps in, and it's like, well, maybe people won't like that thing that I said, and maybe people won't like that lyric, or maybe that time signature is too weird and not, poppy, and nobody will like it. And I think that it's just like knowing. You really have to like know if you believe in it yourself. And if you believe in it, then that's like the most you can hope for. And everything else is just like bonus.
Okay. The last question. How are you personally able to figure out whether it is something you really believe in, or if it's something that's like kind of infecting you from this commercialized sphere?
I think if I genuinely love it, I think I can only put out things that I genuinely love. And I can't put out something just because I think someone else might love it. And that's the only litmus test that I've been able to find.
Did you stumble? Did you put out stuff that you were like, eh? And then at the other end of it, you're like, oh, I regretted that.
Well, no, I don't ever feel like I've betrayed myself in any way like that. I feel like I've always, been authentic about what I've released, but, like, it's still hard to listen to your own music. Like, it's like once an album is out, I just, like, can't even listen to it anymore because I just hear, like, mistakes and, like, I can hear a chair squeaking in the studio. How did I not hear that before? So... yeah, it's like, it's painful to release music no matter what, I think, if you're like someone who has deep emotions.
Mm-hmm. Okay, then this is the final question. How have you been able to stay true to yourself as opposed to like, you're like, well, maybe I could write a song like Gwen Stefani and do that if I wanted to?
Well, I love pop music. I was thinking this before, I can't remember what you were saying, but it reminded me of how much I used to love that show One Hit Wonders on VH1. Mm-hmm. And, like, all of those songs kick ass, And, like, I think it's amazing because it's usually a band that, like, hasn't really put out that much other stuff that's great that you want to listen to again. But it's, like, lightning in a bottle for whatever reason. This is just, like, a magical thing. And... if you're lucky, you get one of those. Maybe not in like that level of success, but you at least can get the feeling from listening back to it. And like, I think there's still authenticity in that kind, like in an undeniable pop song. It's rewarding on a personal level if you feel like you can do that, even if you're not getting like, a giant tour bus out of it. Does that answer the question?
Yeah. Look, there's no right answers on this show.
Okay.
Christina, thank you so much for joining me. Thank you for taking time out of your trip to talk to me.
Thank you so much for having me. I was so honored to be invited.
Of course. I've been a fan since I first heard your first album, like years ago.
Thank you so much.
I love your new album.
That's amazing.
So
thank you.
Yeah. So thanks for talking.
Well, hopefully we'll cross paths again.
Yeah. Hey, if you're ever in Los Angeles.
All right. Yeah. I'll hit you up.
And we'll see you next time. Bye.
Bye, oh, 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 bye.